Thank you. And welcome everybody, also from my side. And as Mark said, I'm going to share a little bit of our story. As said, it's a fairly young and short story because we just recently joined the Mendix family, if you will. And as we are a heavy customer of Lotus Notes, Domino, we want to swap some of those applications with Mendix potentially, and I'm going to tell you something about that story. But before we get started, just a quick question to the audience. So who knows Continental? Or at least some. Now, nasty question followed up. Who has Conti tires mounted on its car? We need to work on that. I know I'm not supposed to sell any products here, but obviously the tires and the tire business is what we are most well known for. So that's one of our core products, and that's how it looked like in the early days. So when Conti was founded, that was 1871, and that was so. Since then, quite a while passed, obviously. So we're not only doing tires anymore, but we have quite a long history in spinning stuff around. So that's where we are coming from. But based in Hanover, or founded in Hanover by the time, Conti has evolved over the time until the present, to become a multinational automotive manufacturing company. So besides tires, which is still part of our business, which I'm not sure you can see here, we basically have grown and extended our business or diversified our business, right? So we have now sales of 44 billions in 17. Current figures are still not being released, but will be released in the next days. And we have roughly around 240,000 employees worldwide, which is quite a large number. But what you can also see is that besides the tires business, we basically offer anything that machinery, the cars basically need. It's not just the engine, but also the electronics, but also the software that basically goes with the electronics. So Conti has quite a while ago taken a very strategic decision to say that we are not just we don't want to be just a pure hardware manufacturing company. But we also want to provide and evolve more into an IT company, providing software on top of our hardware. But it's not just that software that basically comes with the hardware, but then it's even going one step further. It's basically providing services on top of that, leveraging that software and also the hardware. And that's for us really a key strategy, and that's obviously becoming more of a not just a hardware company, but an IT-enabled company, which is, I think, quite important to understand. So obviously digitalization is very important for our product development, but not only for the product development. So it's also for us at corporate IT, and that's where I'm coming from. So I'm not coming from the product development. It's really from the corporate IT that I come from. It's the same thing is true though, that what is driving the change in the product development is being able to adapt to ever-changing environments quickly and gaining speed by new ways of doing things. That's also true for us as a corporate IT. So, and that's very crucial, and we try to do that with new technologies that arise in the market as well. What we have also as a corporate IT, what we have seen is that our customers are changing as well. So it's not just new technologies that are arising that we try to leverage, but it's also that people, I mean, our business people become more IT savvy, and obviously they seek technologies, they seek understanding of certain things or doing certain things by themselves. So that self-service component becomes very important, not just in using and consuming stuff, but also in building stuff. So that citizen developer that we heard earlier about in the keynote, I think that's also a key thing that we have realized is changing. So there's a couple of other things that keep us moving, but this is really why digitalization is also important for us as a corporate IT. Now, question to you, if you look at software, I assume you do software development projects as well, right? This is at the corporate IT, that's our core business. But if you think about that in terms of time to market, so what's the dimensions that come to your mind? Is that weeks, months, years? Why are you laughing? Yeah, for us, most of the times, I mean, in the past until now, it has been years. So it took like 1, 2, 3 years, depending on the complexity of the software and technology behind. It took really years from scratch, getting started, till having that rolled out to the client, to the customer. And that's really long. And the issue with that is obviously that, well, it's not really well geared for being flexible enough to quickly adapting to change or even continuously changing. So that's really difficult, and we are lacking the tools that provide us that speed, and the capability to adopt and adapt to change, the ever-changing environment quickly. And we also lack a culture that basically allows for that allows for dealing with uncertainty that you always have around software, the software requirements, and that also allows for the imperfection that lies within the software. So software will never be perfect, right? And the project can run 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years. There will still be a bug in the software. So you need to get used to basically rolling that out as well. So currently, as is situation, as said in the beginning and in the headline, we are a heavy user of Lotus Notes and Domino. So, and over the time that became a burden, and still is a burden that is killing us softly, if you will. And we try to move away from that. So I'm not sure how many of you know Lotus Notes, Domino, or even use that. Okay, so we are not hanging in there alone. A couple of people or companies share that pain. Okay, that's good. So for Conti, we have a couple of hundred applications eventually running on Domino, and this is really a pain for us. I mean, just developing those applications, maintaining those applications, and just keeping the life on and also enhancing those applications. So what we did is we already moved away from Notes. So we did a large project to basically introduce a new technology for the whole messaging, for the email, if you will. So we moved into a Microsoft ecosystem using Office 365, and with that introduced what we call a completely new work style. So we also want to not just introduce new technology, but we also want to introduce like other components that eventually allow for some more agility. So networking culture and those kind of aspects that eventually will also aid to the speed component. So we did that one project that was addressing the cultural and the technology bit of it, but somehow created a void, created a gap for all those Domino applications, because those Domino applications are still there, and Microsoft Office 365 is not, by default at least, not replacing that or providing a new home for those applications. So we still have the situation that we have to find a new home for those Domino applications, and that's basically what's driving us and how we basically got together with Mendix. So, well, you could wonder why don't we just leave those applications on Domino? We could also just get rid of Notes. We got rid of Notes. We use Exchange Outlook now and just keep Domino. But there's a couple of reasons why maybe we don't want to do that. One of the biggest reasons, or one of the most important reasons, I guess, is latency and bandwidth. So we have with the first application that we now replaced, we had a situation that in far remote locations, people actually had to get separate laptops, separate machineries, because clicking a button in that application took like 10 minutes until the application was basically released again. Until then, it was frozen and people could not continue working. So that's really, latency and bandwidth was really a problem. Obviously, also Lotus Notes and the Domino applications, they come from a time where there was no mobile and no web, so they are not really geared for that kind of technology and use case, which we obviously want to leverage as well. Also, maintainability is a big pain for us. So obviously, business has a constant and steady demand of new features that we want to implement. But with the Domino applications at hand and the complexity that they have gained over the time, it became more and more difficult for us to just add a single feature. So maintaining that, enhancing those applications became really challenging. And then eventually we added one feature and broke another 10 features without knowing, despite of all the testing. It's also that reuse component was really crucial for us. We want to gain speed in software development projects by building stuff once and eventually reusing those components. And that is obviously with Domino and the scripts and the code developed there, that's quite challenging. It is possible, but it's not really easy. Look and feel, I'm not sure, I mean, for the people that know Domino, you know that look and feel. Okay, it's a pain. The quality aspect is also difficult in the effort that you basically have to invest in just getting the quality where it's supposed to be, right? So if I look at some changes we did recently in one of the applications that we replaced with Mendix now, for the last features that we added, and there was really not a lot of features that we added, but it took like more than a year just to get the features tested, bugs identified, fixed, tested again, bugs identified, more than a year. So the effort that we as an IT organization, but also as a business organization, our business counterparts have to invest for getting that basically tested is immense. And we need to get rid of that. It's also time for delivery, storage, and storage is also something that's, I mean, Domino is not really a database in a rational sense or relational sense. So we basically, with the data that we stored, that we collected over the more than 10 years now in that one given application, we reached certain physical limits that Domino is able to cater for. So the cycles for cleaning up the database became shorter and shorter, and eventually now are basically impacting our business life cycles. And that's a situation where we have to do something about that. So at some point, I think Domino, when Conti was still a tires company, tires manufacturing company, Domino was fine. But as the company grew, I mean, those issues really became significant for us. So that's a lot of reasons to move. The question is, well, only how do we move? So we thought about that quite well. Said, well, which of the Domino apps do we have to consider? What are available workflow technologies that we already have in-house for like building apps, for automating processes that our business has in mind? And how do we basically match those applications, those application requirements with the technologies that we have at hand? So that was basically what we thought about. And we also had a deadline. So by moving into the Microsoft ecosystem, obviously you purchase a lot of new license, you want to get rid of the old license, right? So we said there was a need to get rid of all the Domino applications, or there still is that need until 21. So we have a little more than a year left to get all those applications moved into another ecosystem. So what do? We start a new project. And with a new project, we identify those applications. We thought about those criteria and basically did the matching. And one of the findings that we had is that there will not be a one-size-fits-all approach. So we will not have that single technology that will work for us for all applications that we have, because those applications that we did on Domino in the past, that we currently still use, are quite diverse in a sense how they are built, but also what's being done with that. So what we figured out of that project and what we did is basically that we tried to cluster that. We tried to cluster the application and also the technologies that we already have in a stack. And we said, well, there's some use cases that are probably closely related to our systems of records, like let's say your SAP or SAP systems, and there's some processes or applications revolving around that are currently not supported by any application, and then eventually it makes sense to use like SAP technology to basically build that application there and have it closely bundled with your core system of records like SAP. Well, we did that. We've been there. We've done that. That makes sense to some extent, but it's really a high effort. That's a high cost. That comes at a high cost. So makes sense, but not in all cases. We also said there's another category that is, we have some Domino applications that are very document-centric, where there's like a lot of file attachments uploaded, for instance, and there's a little approval workflow around that. Sometimes that's very user-centric. So the workflow itself is not very complex, and also the effort to build the application is not complex. And there it may be valid to say, well, this application can be addressed by a tool provided by Office or Microsoft Office 365 or SharePoint, which is also part of that suite. That I think was also one of the key findings there. Then we have applications or let's say processes that are specific to a certain domain, to a certain use case, business use case, that have fairly complex business logic and are medium effort to basically build or configure. And what we said is this is basically where it's better to buy something off the shelf, take a product that is addressing exactly that need, opposed to building something ourselves or just trying to reuse any existing technology. So that's a domain-specific applications, and there's many examples also in our company, in our portfolio, where there's enough justification to basically have this application sit there besides all the other technologies. And then obviously if everything fails, you can always have it custom built. Use .NET or any other programming language, I guess that doesn't matter. Issue with that is obviously that's a high effort. It's not really geared to apply changes quickly and rapidly, and it comes with similar issues that we currently have with Lotus Notes. So that's why we said one of the key or the major findings out of the evaluation that we did is basically that there's something lacking in our technology stack. So there's a general purpose platform or technology lacking that allows for a fast time to market, where I can just within 3, 4, 5 days build an app, prototype something, and then throw it out on the market. Right now we don't have that. So that's why we said, okay, understood, besides those 4 boxes, we need something else. And that what we need is, I like that Lego example. So I think because that is easy to understand also for our business. So obviously what we are looking for in terms of a fifth pillar in that technology stack is basically something that's easy to use and also understandable for our business. So if I show our business I don't know, a script written in .NET or some other programming language, that's kind of difficult for them to read, right? What they understand is maybe some Visio charts or something similar. They know how, at least they have something in mind, how a screen of an application can look like, what data they want to collect and what sequence. That's what they understand, but it's difficult for them really to talk or understand the tools that we usually use to describe the applications on the IT side. Also, as said, it's important that we have a technology in place that allows for reusable components and basically uses protocols and structures that are common, that can be shared. Because many of our legacy applications, they use protocols and structures that are really unique to that one use case. And then you come with a second application, you want to connect to that, and then it's like, can't talk to each other. And last but not least is our business obviously wants to have fun. So they must work with those applications every day. There's no way around it, but then it should at least be as easy as possible, and if possible, even a bit fun for them to work with those applications, like it is at least for me to play with Lego. So I'm not sure who of you has kids. So I got 2 boys, and Lego is a big thing still for me as well. So how do we get there? Well, guess what? We did another project. So and just a little project. In that project, we basically took a look at the market. So we opened the window, took a look outside, and then basically tried to identify the technologies, the products, and the vendors that are out in the market that would eventually fill that gap, that provide that fifth pillar, that fifth technology that we are currently lacking. Combined with the requirements that we already evaluated or gathered in first place, we could basically go out to the market and address a couple of vendors and then say, well, look, this is generally what we want to do. And in order to get a better understanding and come to an educated decision in the end, we said we skip that sales pitch. We don't want to do that. Instead, we want to have you like 1, 2, 3, 4 days on site with us building one application. So we want to see how you build that, how it's being built, how easy that is, whether you can really configure that, whether you need to write custom code or whether you need some add-on that is that you need to purchase eventually. How simple or difficult that is, and how well that covers our requirements that we had in the first place. And you see also at the bottom of the screen, doesn't work on the screen. So you see also the requirements there that were really high level. So we said we have some requirements around user and access management, which is important to us, integrations, also then request and workflow management, because most of the times we try to automate something. So that's a very crucial component that we need to focus on. Then you also have search and monitoring, reporting requirements, and obviously the administration. So building the app. So how do I administer and build the app in the first place? How's the data model being built? How are the screens being built? How's the business logic being designed, and so on and so forth. So that's basically how we evaluated the outcomes of those sessions. Really, that was quite intense sessions that we had, a couple of days with a couple of vendors. And then eventually, end of September 2018, Mendix was awarded as the technology or the platform that we want to fill the void with. Now, there's a couple of reasons why we did that. Well, one was that the team that Mendix basically brought on site was really convincing, was highly engaged, highly motivated. The spirit and attitude of the team was really good, was very convincing. The technology was outstanding, so we could do everything we wanted without a single line of code. And one thing, I'm not sure if you know Conti. I mean, Conti likes orange. I'm not sure whether you figured that, but so that's also something that I think we have in common. So we went with Mendix and we said, okay, the first application, and we did not. Mendix advised us to pick as a first application, pick an application that's simple. yeah, we did not pick the simplest application because the urgency to do something was actually the largest with one of the more complex applications. So we went for one of the more complex applications that's called electronic capital request. In a nutshell, that's basically a way of getting project budget requested and approved. So like if I want to build a new tires manufacturing plant somewhere in Russia, then I need to raise a capital request and get a couple of millions or billions approved before I can start my project. So just to give you an idea of the numbers and the layout, well, this on the left-hand side is not Mendix, that's Domino, for the ones that don't know that. So that's how Domino application looks like. And then on the right-hand side, that's the Mendix application. So that's how it will look like going forward. And just to give you an idea of the scale or the magnitude, so we have like 10,000 users in there in that system, using that on a frequent or infrequent basis. We have a throughput of 10,000 requests per year that are being raised and approved and handled in that application. With that, every year there's a 20 gig plus more being added in terms of file attachments. And that's what I meant, where you all of a sudden then reach physical limits in the Domino architecture. So initially, we had to at a very early phase of that, not this Mendix project, but when we built that application in the first place a long time ago, we had to change the Domino technology, and we had to rebuild that application already at a very early stage. And that took more than a year to rebuild that. Now with Mendix in the back end, it took 12 sprints, a sprint a week, so roughly a quarter to basically rebuild that. So we had a 300 plus, almost 400 stories in there, and we're basically rebuilding that application in just 3 months, which is awesome. So we gained a lot of speed, coming back to that speed component in the first place. We gained a lot of speed in building the application, but also for the end users, when they browse the application, when they use the application, there's no need to have a separate spare laptop available for clicking a button, waiting 10 minutes until it comes back. It's now instantaneously basically coming back and reacting, responding to your action. So all good in the end? Well, we are not at the end yet. And we were caught by surprise. So what in the beginning to us sounded like a sales or a marketing slogan is that you can build your applications like 6 to 10 times faster. Eventually that was true, and we were not really expecting that. Our business was not expecting that. So what happened is that, well, we have that application now more or less built ready. We have the Ferrari waiting in the garage, but we can't drive it out because the roads are not ready yet. So now what business figured is that, okay, now we are ready, IT is ready to build the application, now we need to make the organization ready. So they went ahead and said, well, okay, you took 1 quarter to build the application, now we need half a year to basically get the application trained and get business sign-off and so on and so forth. So eventually, that was beginning of the year. Eventually, now we go live mid of this year, 1st of July. But that's also a large mind shift for us, and the learning is that now that the technology is basically capable to deliver products quickly and early in the process, much faster than we were able to do that in the past, business needs also to get started way earlier in the process, right, with the rollout. Another thing that we learned is that, well, the agile, we also with Mendix, we basically introduced the idea of doing projects in an agile way, in an agile sense. So we worked in weekly sprints, and that worked actually quite well together with the Mendix teams, the colleagues from Mendix, but did not work so well with our internal organization. And the reason being is that our internal organization is like, if you look at people, if you look at IT organization, or if you look at the business organization, they all do like 20 things in parallel. They have like 5 projects in parallel, 10 applications and processes to maintain in parallel. And that makes it difficult to really have resources dedicated to that project and just get it done with. So that's also one of the reasons why our projects like run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years eventually. So that's also a key learning that the organization for us needs to adopt that mindset, and also needs to change the way of doing projects in order to gain that speed that we now have a technology that is basically supporting that. Another learning is that lacking that agile mindset also on the business side makes it actually difficult to really have those incremental benefits over time. I mean, the situation here is maybe different or special in a sense that we have to do, coming from the Domino world, we'll have to do a one-to-one replacement. So you have an application, you need to replace that application more or less in the same way. Nonetheless, I mean, business could have said that, well, having that benefit ahead of time is more important for us. You actually just provide a couple of the requirements, or cover just a couple of the requirements, and then basically deliver that. So that's basically the example with the skateboard. So if you want to move from A to B, then you can start with a skateboard, and eventually you upgrade to the scooter, to the bike, to the motorbicycle, and then to the car, ultimately to your Ferrari, right? So that's ultimately how you want to do things. But business was not really buying into that idea, and I guess our IT organization did neither. So we had to wait until the Ferrari was actually built in order to roll it out. So what we did in parallel to that one application is basically we said, okay, we also need to make the organization ready. We can't just do project by project, but we basically need to think about how do we scale that up? How is the larger organization beyond that one project or the single projects looking like? And what we did with the support of the Mendix team is basically we tried to adopt that digital execution practice or program. And as you can see by the red arrow at the beginning, we are still at a very early stage. Truly, reflection would probably be we are even a bit further left from where the arrow is. But the goal still is that until end of this year, we at least put the structures in place, put the capacity in place, that we have sort of a team and a strategy that can address those application and demands arising from new applications. And the goal is obviously that we can scale that up beyond this year, so that we have the capacity and the power within the company to basically build more and more applications. As said, we fairly new to Mendix. Right now we don't have that capacity, and we have to do all those Domino applications. So that's why we need to scale it up as well. So, and the plan is basically that this year we eventually do 2 to 5 applications, and that's 100% done external. So we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the skill, but we also don't have the capacity to basically do that. Still, we have to do it, and we have to move forward. So the plan is that for next year we eventually build up some internal developers, so we get them educated, but they will not be at the same productivity level that an experienced Mendix developer. Right, so the plan is really to build up a team, have additional apps built, but still with a high utilization of external partners, be it Mendix or other Mendix partners. And then obviously we want to scale that up, and also in 2020 and 21, we also want to get it closer to business, not just to have business as a customer, but basically enable business to build parts of their applications themselves, either build the entire application themselves, or at least use Mendix as a platform to specify what they need before they hand it over to us, and then we basically fill it with life. So that's pretty much the learnings and the roadmap ahead. So to wrap it up, it's basically what we keep telling internally is that, well, we did a lot of that spaghetti stuff in the past, and we are fed up with the pasta. So going forward, we should do more of the Lego building blocks that are easy to reuse and reassemble into new applications. So that's really where we want to go to and where we want to be in the future. And with that, I would thank you all and open it up for questions if there is any.
Hi, I'm Edo ten Klooster of 8020 IT Management. I have 2 questions and they are related. One question is, you got stuck in Domino, but IBM also got stuck in Domino, so they moved it to HCL, and HCL from India promises a brave new future of Domino. Did you consider to stay with Domino? I would be interested in the perspective there, because you made the choice. And the other question is, you have 2 platforms now for a while. So you have the Mendix platform, which is not low cost. It's low code, but not low cost. And you have still the Domino platform, which probably is low cost. But for a while you have 2 platforms now. And how did you make your decision? Because I know some companies who hate to have 2 platforms at the same time because it increases your IT costs.
Right. So I can't really tell about your first question whether we considered that. So we in that sense at a corporate IT level we did not consider that because it was basically a dictate top down that this will 2021 is the deadline until Domino will be gone. So I guess the closer we get to the deadline and depending on what the progress is, we may have to reconsider that. But so far that has not been considered. About the two platforms running in parallel, that was not intended to be like that, right? Because the intention was, well, is Office 365 coming? Oh yeah, there's Domino. Domino is going away, but then nobody. There was a gap. There was a void basically created that nobody meant to fill, right? Now we filled that, but we are trying to fill that. We are still in the process of doing that, but there was no plan that was basically saying that, okay, for that cut-over period of 2 years, it's okay to have those two platforms in parallel. That was not the plan. Now it is like that, but still, I mean, that one platform will definitely go away. Ideally, we establish the other one, but then we don't have this coexistence anymore.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Did you also evaluate other low-code platforms, and what was the differentiating factor for Mendix that you chose Mendix as your to replace your Domino and Lotus Notes?
Yeah, so we also considered other low-code platforms. So in the end, what was important to us is the color. No, I'm just kidding. But it was really when we did those sessions, like 3 days in a row. It was really convincing to see how our requirements, how the app was actually built, and that there was no code written. So that was really, I mean, we had an evaluation sheet basically, and we could tick off all the boxes and could say, well, no code written, no code written, no code written. And it was just simple or fairly simple for the team to basically build that and address the requirements. That was really, really convincing, and also the team that was on site was really, I mean, you could feel the enthusiasm in the team, in the group, in the company, and I think that was convincing for me and also for the team.
One of the key factors is usually the data migration if you are re-platforming. So did you go for a data migration or just archive the old applications data?
That's a good question. So if I usually try to talk our business customers out of that, for a multitude of reasons, to not have to migrate data. Also for like data retention reasons, we better have at some point to throw it away. So in that specific scenario, we said there's no data migration. There's some documents that are on transition that eventually have to be migrated, but then manually. But there will be no large IT migration of data.
Okay. The questions?
I could have had another question.
Yeah, you're good at it.
What is your biggest disappointment in having selected Mendix?
Our internal IT organization. It's really, for us, it's challenging. I mean, it's really awesome to see what the technology can do for you today. We had that a while ago. We did not have that on the radar, and now you have the technology and you are not capable of using it. That's kind of disappointing. But it's not. That's not Mendix. That's not
Mendix. You're
Mendix.
working for Mendix, eh? He likes the answer. Thank you.
It's the truth, but it's not Mendix's fault. I mean, we are not where we want to be, right, from our strategic perspective. So we still have a long way to go.
How do you do this transformational journey within the business? So you're talking about IT. How do you do it with the business guys? They are as, let me say, as slow as IT. The environment is changing, so I see another screen. Oh, don't do it to me. I love my 22-year-old application. How do you do this transformation, this business transformation?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I was talking about the IT organization a lot, and I keep complaining about that a lot. But obviously, the business organization has a share in that as well, right? So when we did those weekly sprints, where like the business key users were expected to test, I mean, they were not available all the time, right? Because they have other stuff to do as well. So what we did far ahead of the implementation project is we were trying to educate them in terms of agile. Also, when we got started with Mendix, then there was an agile awareness workshop to again educate people and then get them up to speed. But education is one thing that is important, but then the organization did not change, right? So I mean, they have heard it. Eventually, they have understood it. The organization is not set up and not working in that way. So you still can't really work how you would a agile project expect to run or to work. So the business is there to some extent, but not fully. So we are still trying to, entertain and educate them. But I think that they also seen that working in that way is actually beneficial for them, because it's easy for them to manage some uncertainty, which we had in the past in projects. So they see the benefit, and they also see the benefit of the early and the good result. So it's actually more than the bottom up, basically delivering results, which eventually makes them think or rethink the way they do things, and then change behavior as well.
Our biggest gap is not bottom up, it's the gap between top wanted to bottom. We have, let me say, a smaller community who really sees the advantages of bridging the gap through the organizational layer. That's the challenge. That's really the challenge, and we are a lot of guys to overcome in the middle.
And we have not solved that challenge. So as said, that only worked for a very small, dense team. So that was working closely together. But whenever you needed expertise from some other teams, then you basically were back and stuck in the old organization and the old patterns of working. So we are far from being there yet, right? That's maybe not the answer to your question, but yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah. Oh. First come, first serve.
One question: do you see problems with your suppliers with the suppliers in this chain?
With the suppliers of like Mendix suppliers, or with the
suppliers, say the production supplies for production and that kind of things, or is there no relation to suppliers to information from suppliers that you receive?
Right now not. So what we right now have in mind on focus is really just applications, just at the corporate level. So that is really supporting the corporate functions, the headquarters, and the global functions, or functions at a global level. So we are not down to the shop floor level, where eventually we have some impact also on suppliers and stuff. That's maybe 2 steps down the road.
Are you basically moving the existing applications as is, or are you also trying to implement some new features as to basically create some enthusiasm with the business as to further improve the adoption process?
Good question. So business was saying initially one-to-one because they wanted to enforce that nothing is left behind. But whenever they see something new popping up, a new design option popping up, they also want to adopt it quickly. And then we deviate from that one-to-one and eventually implement new features as well. So like a mobile app-like component being available. I mean, it was always clear that Mendix can do that, but we never addressed it in the first place. That was not a business requirement. But then eventually somebody in the management team thought that's a smart idea to have, and then we needed to do that. So we deviated more and more from that one-to-one approach, but we deviated in a sense that we kept adding. We did not take anything away, which was I would have appreciated if we could have left something behind as well. But maybe with the next step, we'll see.
Okay, Nui.
Hi, my name is Nui from Cape Group. I'm wondering, how did you overcome? There must have been some conservative forces within the IT department towards a low-code solution. How did you overcome those?
In our area, corporate IT, there were no well, that's not entirely true. So we had to convince our CIO.
But that was the conservative force in itself.
Now this.
But not IT engineers, because we encounter often when you enter when you start off low code in IT, through the IT organization, there's often a lot of pressure on coming up with solutions that you can actually tweak the code, and I think the big game is to not let that happen, and that can kind of leverage conservative forces within the lower ranks of IT departments. My finding.
True, but it's like at the corporate IT level, there's we're actually closer to business, not that far down to engineering. So there's little people and knowledge really doing coding, actual coding. So that's why at a operational level there was not that much of pushback. However, there's not just one CIO, so that's really corporate CIO or corporate functions CIO that we had to convince that is basically buying into that and supporting that. Top down, also bottom up, then we support that, as we are not that close to development. But in the other divisions, they are actually close to developing code themselves, and there is quite some pushback. And they were basically then, they are not, we have a follow-up project now lined up, which they want to do custom code. And they were forced by the management now to go with Mendix, and they are not really happy about that. So the pushback is there. And now we have to convince them somehow.
Celebrate successes.
Yeah.
We have time for one more question. Short question.
Okay.
Hello. How did you manage to define the number of days or to staff the development team for this project? Did you manage to evaluate all the features and define time for it, or?
No. So for the effort estimation, I would have to trust the Mendix team. But I mean, if you do a one-to-one migration, you would think that we are capable of saying exactly what the features and the requirements are, right? But it was like a discovery, and every day we were unfolding another box that had another 10 requirements in it, and that also made the effort estimation quite challenging for the team. So that was really then on a weekly basis that we discussed the requirements that the team is focusing on, and then doing the effort estimation for that week. But entirely, we could not do an effort estimation up front, because that's really a surprise what, in the end, all is in.
Okay. Well, Sven, thank you very much. Very, very nice presentation. Good insight in your first steps with Mendix. For everybody that is interested in to see how this journey could develop, tomorrow there's Pascal Smitsart from ABN AMRO, who has progressed this journey already a year longer. And I think it might be interesting to see, okay, so what could follow after this initial journey. Yeah. Thank you very much. You'll be around today and tomorrow.
Of course.
So if there's questions, you please reach out to Sven directly. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next session. Thank you.